Hey Boris, how's it going?
I'm good. I was just quietly listening into you guys having a chat.
Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to join or not. But yeah, thanks for joining. I know we were trading DMs about trying to schedule something, but this works as well.
No, I
Yeah, I mean,
think,
look,
Toby,
a
I think
lot of
they want to do a special one. I was really listening in, so I'll give a couple of minutes. But I think that
yeah,
my
yeah.
people want to do a special one where we address, because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation in the markets right now, and so that's why I think they reached out, because I'm doing a whole series of things for big institutions. I'm doing stuff for retail. Over the next month, I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff because, I'll give you an example. I had a call with a very large investor in Curaleaf today. I got the sense that he was thinking about selling, getting out because of the reasons that you guys have been talking about. Because of he felt like that we were going to get legislation much sooner than we were, and he feels like he's not hearing anything from DC now, and so he's like, if this isn't going to happen, maybe this is dead money, and I should go into something else. And so I had a conversation with him today, and I can tell you after I got off the call, I think he was a buyer today, and I think he's so big that I think the whole market may have reacted positively to his buying because, this is a major, major, major fund manager. Probably runs over $1 trillion, so it's a big operator, and so I think there's a lot of misinformation. The first thing I want to say to you guys, to everybody, is, you know, please listen, because I feel like the retail market doesn't listen. I told everybody we're not going to get anything until April and May of 22. Okay, and everybody thought we were going to get something in NDAA, and I can't get on the phone every night to tell everybody, but guys, we were never going to get safe banking last year. It was never going to happen. It wasn't in the cards. It was, and I've said this to everybody I know. It wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen. Right? The best chance we have of getting safe banking is going to be in April and May. It's going to be part of the appropriations bill. I can tell you there's massive amount of work going on in DC. We're very involved in it right now. There's huge amount of conversations on tax, on 280E. The Republicans are at 3.5%. The Democrats are at 25%. We're having huge negotiations. We're explaining it to them. There's big negotiations taking place on banking. There's Everything is happening. It's just happening very quietly right now. It's going to start. You're going to start hearing the echo chambers go probably, I think, the second, if not the third week of February is when you're going to start hearing all the stuff out of DC on cannabis. I'm not saying 100% by any stretch of the imagination, because if I did, nobody should ever listen to me again. But I continue to say what I said earlier. I think there's a very, very high probability that we get a derivative of safe banking in April or May. And it's going to be probably attached to the appropriations bill, which is a must pass bill. And I've said that for a year. I'm continuing to say that. And all the people that were, in my opinion, falsely, and I would have taken it if we got it in December, but we knew we weren't going to get it. And I was watching Twitter. I was watching everybody saying, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. We were never going to get it, guys. And so I want everybody to understand that was misinformation, and don't make investment decisions based on misinformation. And that misinformation, in many ways, has caused this panic that we've had in the markets, because everybody thought we were going to get it. Everybody thought we were setting up for it. And then when we didn't get it, everybody ran for the hills. And now, of course, everybody believes we're not going to get it. And I just heard one of your guests earlier speaking on that subject saying, I don't think that Republicans are going to give it to the Democrats. So let me tell you something. This is the most popular piece of legislation in DC now. There is nothing else that's going to get passed except this. Now, whether they have the guts to move it all the way through is a different issue. And I think there's some risk to it, but I'd say there's a much higher probability that we get it than we don't get it. And I'm not making a call on whether you should hold or buy. I'm not making that call. I never make that call. All I'm saying to you is what's going on. And what's going on in Curaleaf, as you guys know, is probably the only MSO that's actively involved in this in DC. I mean, everybody's part of the various trade groups there, but nobody's working as hard as we are on this. You hear a lot of talk from Kim Rivers and from GTI saying, we don't really need this. We don't need this. I say bullshit on that. Absolutely need it. Right? I mean, cannabis cannot continue to operate in an environment where we're paying 80% of taxes, and anyone who says they can is full of shit. I'm sorry. It's just not true. Cannabis needs to be on a level playing field with the rest of industry in the United States. And although we'll probably always pay a higher tax like alcohol does, we need to have our deductions of SG&A. We need to fix the problems that are structural in this marketplace. And so I'm not letting up on it. And I absolutely believe that we will get there, but it will take a little bit of time to get there. And it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to, obviously I know that you have a ton of conversations on, the Hill that you probably can't share. And I don't want you to share anything that would kind of jeopardize your positioning, et cetera. But can you be a little more specific? Are you talking safe? Are you talking safe plus? Are you talking 280E? And also, who's kind of the gatekeeper? Like who's you say it's a bipartisan issue. Obviously, like I think people on Twitter, they have this perception that it's not. But
Well,
anything else you could just kind of share?
They're very wrong, right? There's a huge amount of support. The House is not the issue anymore. The Senate's the issue. It's a simple issue. Schumer, for some reason, and I've made this very clear to him, wants a all-encompassing law. And believe me, we all do. But he's not going to get it. And so Schumer needs to listen. There's one law that right now is in the way of cannabis, and that's this Build Back Better. I think in January they'll understand that they're not going to get Build Back Better. Manchin's not going to support it. Republicans are not going to support it. It's losing support within the Democrats as well because of the fact that we have a high inflation rate in the country. So I don't think Build Back Better is going to happen. The minute Build Back Better is dead on arrival, which I think it will be over the next 2 weeks, then they have only two pieces of legislation that they're even considering before the midterms. It's the voting legislation and cannabis. Those are the only two laws that they're even considering. And I can tell you that Schumer's going to try in the beginning in February and March to get a full bill just on cannabis. It's not going to happen. I'm telling you guys right now. You can listen to me, not listen to me. It's your decision. But I've been right so far. He's not going to get it. And he's going to want to get something. And I believe that there's very significant support for a safe banking law to get through Congress and the Senate in April, early May, as part of a addendum to the appropriations bill. The appropriations bill is something that has to happen. It's a mandatory bill. It has to go through, and it will be part of that bill, in my opinion. If it's going to be part of anything, it's going to be part of that. And what it looks like right now, Toby, is too early for me to tell. We are very intense negotiations, but I can tell you what we're trying to get into it. We're trying to get a restructuring of obviously 280E. We're trying to get safe banking as terms of banking services. And we're obviously trying to get safe harbor language for uplisting. Now, there is an argument out there that says that the federal banks, the national banks, money center banks, as well as the exchanges, can't service the sector unless it's descheduled. So safe banking, they're arguing, may not be enough. It's a legal issue. It's not a political issue. Now, we're making the argument with our counsel and our lobbyists that, in fact, that's not the case. That gambling operates on a state-by-state legislative basis, but can be serviced by federal banks and money center banks. And so we think we're on the right side of this issue, but it is still being debated right now between lawyers and committee members, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact that all these things are being debated and discussed is a very positive thing. And I can tell you that this has not gone away. It's front and center. I'm not giving any guarantees because I can't control the political system. But I can tell you one thing, that I believe the Democrats need a win. They failed with Build Back Better. I think they need this. Republicans, particularly those that have cannabis in their states, the more moderate wing wants this as well. I think we have the votes. I think we'll get something. I'm taking a gamble saying that, but my view is as it's been for a long time, is that in the spring to the summer of 2022, we're going to get cannabis legislation.
And descheduling obviously solves for the 280E problem.
It does, but I think it's, the descheduling issue is going to be the hard one.
And and and
At this point, guys, we need to take baby steps. Let's be
mhm.
honest. Between you and me, I've been in financial service business for a long time. If the banks see any federal legislation that has the word cannabis in it, they're going to see that it's heading in the right directions. Don't forget, the reason the banks today are not servicing the sector, I'm specifically talking about prime brokerage. That's the real problem, the plumbing problem. Why the big investment community can't get involved in the sector. It's because there's no legislation that exists today that says that cannabis is okay. Nothing. Under Obama, you at least had the Cole Memorandum, which basically said that the ADAs and the federal agencies cannot fine if you service cannabis. That gave them the ability to at least operate in cannabis. But under Trump and Sessions, they got rid of that Cole memo. They rescinded it. So now you have no piece of legislation. So my view is that even if the legislation isn't absolutely perfect, which it never is the first time around, that as long as there's federal legislation that has the word cannabis in it, I think you're going to see a lot more funds, banks, and other people say, you know what, this is heading in the right direction. We're going to take a risk on this. But right now, they're just not prepared to because there's nothing. There isn't a single piece of federal legislation that, in a positive way, recognizes the states or cannabis as being legal in the United States.
Do you think if yeah, and I appreciate, look, no one's, you're not going to say it, I'm not going to say it, nothing's 100% when it comes to DC. So we definitely agree on that. But what's maybe like this sounds like, plan A. What is plan B? Is there a plan B?
Listen, I think the trend is on our side. I mean, now let's get away from Washington for a second. Say we don't get it. The fact is that these businesses, let's be honest, the MSOs have been able to benefit from this current chaos that's taking place with Washington. Because just look at the last several deals that Curaleaf did, right? I mean, these companies they understand these are great businesses, really good businesses, but they cannot operate in a vacuum without federal legislation. And so a lot of these guys are deciding to take, to cash in at this point in time now. And I think there's going to be more and more of that. You're going to see more and more of that coming from Curaleaf, tuck-ins in states where we want to be the dominant player. Now in Arizona, even though we have equal amount of stores to Trulieve, our stores actually do better. So we actually revenue-wise are surpassing Trulieve in Arizona now. I think you're going to see, we're increasing our positions in Nevada, in Utah. You're going to see some other states right now. We're going to announce, we are definitely doing tuck-ins. I'm not saying anything that I haven't said before. We're going to continue to do this and continue to grow our business through organic growth, as well as, with New York, New Jersey, obviously Connecticut coming along, but also through these tuck-in acquisitions. And there's a lot of very good businesses. And I'll tell you, if you ask me, another 6 months of this, and 90% of tier 3 and even big portion of tier 2 is not going to exist. It's going to all get consolidated. And by the way, I want everybody to understand, this is a natural process. This happens in every industry. It happened in the alcohol industry, happened in the cigarette industry, happens in all consumer goods, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. The big companies start to consolidate the small companies into them. The amount of debt capital, I can tell you, I have a line of people that are offering me to buy into our debt deal we just closed. I could probably raise $1 billion right now at 8% if I wanted to. So the money is going to the high quality credits, and the high quality credits are going to be able to consolidate the industry. And that's what you're going to see. And the misnomer is we're going to pay up for these companies. We're not. In 6 months, there's going to be blood on the streets, and the big companies are going to be buying these companies very cheap. And if you notice, I was very careful. I didn't buy this year, except one or two very small deals like Europe I did because strategically I wanted to be there. but I didn't do anything because the prices were too high. Like, all these mid-level MSOs were buying companies at these crazy valuations. We didn't buy anything. We waited, we waited, we waited. The minute the prices started to come down and the minute desperation started happening in the street, we started to buy. And it's only going to get, if this continues, and I think, if we get 280E in May and April, it's going to be over pretty quick. And so that's why we're very, very focused right now on consolidating and getting in as much of these, tuck-in acquisitions as we possibly can.
You mean if you get 280E, if you get it removed, if this stuff happens, the valuations go up again?
Yeah, the valuations are going to go up. Yeah.
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 I guess, yeah, I do want to ask you about the Bloom deal. I mean, you bought Bloom, you bought Trike. The Bloom deal was interesting. It was all cash. How, why did they take all cash?
Um, so it's not quite all cash. Many people misread it. So it was $210 million, 150 of cash. 60 million is a note that they have the right to convert to equity above
Oh,
1750 or
oh,
or take cash. So 60 million of that deal, they have the option to either take cash or stock above 1750.
oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I must have misread that. But still, that's a significant premium to where your
Yeah.
stock was.
Yeah, but I mean, that was the deal. I mean, I think that's the power of being, a big operator like Curaleaf. We're able to negotiate those deals, and we have the cash. I mean, we literally have no issues. I mean, that was the worry everybody had, was the cash worry. We have no issues with cash. First of all, we're generating a lot of cash now. In the third quarter, this fourth quarter, we'll make enough. I mean, this company is now just going to be generating piles of cash. That's all that's going to happen from now going forward. And in addition to that, we have capital available to us at the snap of a finger as much as we want. So, we're in a very strong position. And I absolutely intend to keep my leadership position in the market. I have no intention of giving that up. And I'm going to tell you guys, we have been approached by at least 3 mid-tier MSOs begging to take them over, begging us to take them over. And the problem is those deals are very complicated. They're still very greedy on price, and I'm going to wait. I'm
And
going to wait.
you might have to divest, right? I mean, that's the thing
Yeah,
with
we'd
some
have
of the
to we'd
larger
have to
deals.
we'd
Yeah.
have to divest some of the assets, and we've done that
Hmm.
before. You guys know we did that with Grassroots. We had to divest of Windy City stores and in Chicago, and then we had to divest of a Maryland asset, and we did it. We were able to divest of those, and we divested them at higher prices than we acquired them for. So we don't have a problem with that, but we may have to divest. But right now, the amount of but the problem is the mid-tier MSOs are still being a little bit, they still think they should command the same kind of multiple that Curaleaf commands. We don't believe that's the case, so we're going to sit and be patient. We're going to wait. And by the
Yeah.
way, if it doesn't happen, I'm okay with that as well. But if it does happen, I've got my war chest. I'm ready to go and do deals.
I don't want to get into the fourth quarter or your guidance because obviously you're going to be reporting the quarter, but just any thoughts on, this, the year kind of played out, obviously first half of the year was really strong. You saw some slowing in the second half of the year. You correctly called that starting in the 2Q call. And then obviously, then we got things like California. Last time you came on here, you had just returned from California. You said it was it was a complete mess. And then, we've seen like pricing, pressure in Florida, and there's some, like, I don't want to say fundamental changes, but there's been some like slowing and maybe some small cracks in the armor. And who knows, like, obviously stock prices are going down, so then that changes the sentiment, the narrative. I mean, as you can tell that it's like the sentiment, in my opinion, I've only been in the sector for 2 years, but it's never been lower. Just any
My
thoughts on
favorite my favorite time of my favorite time is when everybody thinks it's falling apart and everybody wants to get out, is when I am always buying. I'll tell you, Toby, my whole life, I got to be honest with you, my whole life for 30 years, it's when I've always made my money. Is when there's blood in the street, you got to buy, and buy. Because that always pays. The market always comes back. Yes, it takes time. And yes, it could take a little longer. If you're a trader, that's probably not the right mentality. But if you're an investor, as I am, it's the absolute right mentality. I mean, just read Warren Buffett's books. He always buys when it's cheap. He always has cash when times are tough. I I mean, he made his biggest money in 2008, right? Because he was cashed up when the world was falling apart. He came in, he bought everything. 10 years later, he's gotten paid massively on it. And so, because my time horizons are much longer than your average investor, that's the way I look at things. And that's why I'm so excited about the current environment for Curaleaf, because this is the environment that we thrive in. We love this environment. And we think it's going to be really, really good for our company. I think it'll also be good for the other top MSOs, all of whom are doing a terrific job.
Yeah, great. Last question I have is just, how do you think, as far as like when you're talking to the larger institutions, what inning are they in as far as kind of bringing them up the education curve and getting them educated about the sector and the company?
I think actually they're all pretty well educated on the sector now. I think it's just a matter of them having the ability to get into the market. I think they've all got analysts. They're all looking at it, every one of them. I mean, next week, I've got probably 10 calls with the largest names in the world. And I do this every quarter. Even though they're not buying yet, I get on the phone with them and I talk to them. And I tell them about where the industry is, where Curaleaf is, where how things are developing in DC, how things are developing on a state by state basis. And listen, referring back to your last question, nothing ever goes straight up. And I'm not talking about the stock market now. I'm talking about the industry, right? Think about this industry. You have these every 2 years. You have new states that either go medical or states that go from medical to adult use. So you're never going to get a straight line of growth, right? You're going to have periods of time that are going to slow down. And we just went through one. We went through one in the third and the fourth quarter. I think Ben Kovler was on some call recently where he said he thinks that the fourth quarter could be down on the first quarter. And if you actually look at the headset statistics, you'll actually see that that was the case. I don't think that the large MSOs are going to be down on the third quarter. But what I'm saying is that the industry is down on the third quarter, for sure. I mean, growth was less in the fourth quarter, third quarter. Now, there's several reasons for that, and they're all very objective. The first reason is every fourth quarter since I've been in this business is always down in the third quarter because, as an industry, I'm not saying about specifically for our companies, as an industry, because Croptober and the illegal illicit cannabis that comes out of these grows in Oregon, Washington State, Colorado, and California and Maine hits the market in November, December, January, and February. And then at the second half of February and going into March, you see a very significant acceleration of growth in the legal players because the illicit weed is gone, right? Because it's largely grown outdoors. And then they start planting again in April, May, and then it comes out again in October. So the summer is usually very strong. The second half of the first quarter, the second quarter, and the third quarter usually is quite strong because there's no illicit cannabis on the market. Whereas the fourth quarter is always the worst quarter. So you have that, plus you have the COVID effect that we had, and several other things that definitely slowed the market in the third and the fourth quarter. I personally believe we're going to see an acceleration into the second half of the first quarter, like we have in the past, of growth. Now, there's factors that could affect that. New Jersey could delay by a month or so. Other things could happen. So, but I think there's very good growth drivers. If you can see further the end of your nose as an investor, and you're not that short term, guys, this is going to be a fucking great year. 22 is going to be a great year. I mean, we've got New Jersey coming online. We're going to have a shakeout in California. There's going to be huge buying opportunities there. You're going to have a shakeout in Michigan, huge buying opportunities there. You have Connecticut in the last quarter of the year probably coming online. You've got New York in 23. In our case for Curaleaf, we got Germany in 23 coming online. I'm super excited. I have to tell you, this is playing out exactly how I wanted it to play out. Would I like to get safe banking a little faster? Sure, I would. But it's not changing the trajectory of our business in any way. But we do need it. We do need it because we need to start building better cap structures. Our cap structures are largely dominated by retail and family offices and fast money. And the fast money is fucking with retail. It reminds me of the online poker games. I used to be on online poker business. And, the sharks eat the fish. And then what happens is when the sharks eat all the fish, they start eating themselves. And that's a little bit about what's going on in cannabis right now, right? So a lot of the retail investors have been pushed out of the market. because of the volatility and what's happened. And now the fast money's eating each other. And I do think, I personally think, I don't ever make market calls, but I'm going to tell you, I think we're close to the bottom on this one. Really close to the bottom on this one. Because I just think the value in these businesses is so great that you're going to start seeing even the guys that have been playing with, the shorting the market and stuff like that. You're going to start seeing them going, oh, Jesus, at this price level, this is now becoming interesting. And it is becoming really interesting. Where else can you get a company? Curaleaf grew 96% from 20 to 22. We did over 1.2 billion of revenue this year. Okay. When I took Curaleaf public in 2018, I took it public at $11.44 Canadian. We were doing 70 million in revenue that year. 3 years later, we are doing $1.2 billion of revenue. And we're trading at what, I forget where I closed today, $10 or something like that. I'm closed below my IPO price of 3 years ago when I was trading at a $70 million mark value, right? So that's not normal, guys. That's just not normal. And these kinds of anomalies don't last long. They don't.
Well, I mean, the way I view it is like you're a quasi-private business, and like you obviously invest in way more private companies than I do, and I'm in some PE funds, and like they give me the quarterly letter, and they mark up my positions like. It's like, oh, I had a 30% return this quarter, but who knows, because the valuation is kind of made up,
yeah.
right? But like for me, and you've said this before, but I would love for you to just reiterate it. Like, you don't need to sell equity at these levels to do anything. I mean, obviously,
we have so much cash. It's like ridiculous. I mean, I have so much cash. I am 1x EBITDA levered right now. You have to understand, 1 time. Your traditional CPG company that's doing 2%, 3% growth a year is leveraged at 4 to 5 times EBITDA. I'm leveraged at 1x EBITDA. Just think about, and I'm growing I'm doubling my EBITDA every year. So just think about the kind of cheap capital I can attract to continue to do consolidation.
Yeah, I'm a real estate investor. I love debt. And I guess like real last question, I promise. How do you think about potential strategic partnerships? As far as like with, I know you announced the one with Southern Glazer, I think the
Yeah.
distribution company. One thing that I've always kind of like thought is, look, like you don't need to have like an equity infusion or anything like that. But at some point, I would imagine strategics they're probably already circling, they're eyeing it.
So,
I
Toby, I
remember
can answer that question very simply. In 30 years, I have learned you only sell to strategics. You never partner with them.
Mm.
The minute you partner with a strategic, you fuck your business up. They have a very different mentality. When you're an entrepreneur, these guys think 30 years ahead, and their cost of capital is like 2%. Right. And they don't view it the way I do. Right. I live and breathe 24 hours a day in my business. And I'm always trying to improve it, always trying to find better ways of doing things. And, they have a different mindset, these big strategics. And so if you look at my history, I've always sold my companies to strategics. And that's my exit. I've either taken them public and exited, or usually it's a combination of both. I take it public and then I sell it to a strategic 2 years later. Now, in cannabis, we had different reasons to go public. We went public because there was no capital available at the time for cannabis, and so we had to go public, which is not normally what I would have done at that development of the company, that early stage development of the company. But, for instance, this year I took my insurance company public. I've been developing that company for 15 years. It's a $2 billion a year revenue business. It's a fintech business. It all sells online. It's in Europe. It's one of the fastest growing companies in fintech in Europe today. I took it public, and, I'll probably hold on to it for a couple of years, continue to build it out, and then I'll sell it. Same thing I did with my data center business. I built that for 10 years. I took it public. And then 3 years after I took it public, I sold it to one of the biggest consolidators in data centers in the world. So that's sort of, I typically, if I'm talking to a strategic, I'm selling it to them. I'm not partnering with them. I don't think they have anything to add. If I need expertise and if I need smart people, I hire them. I don't need to bring in more bureaucracy, more approval processes, and all that bullshit that comes with doing a deal with a strategic
Okay,
investor.
no, that's a great answer, because one thing that I've been kind of contemplating, look, like, people say the sector needs a catalyst, right? And I think we can kind of agree on that, but eventually, the trends are going, your business is going to generate a lot of value. But one thing I was kind of reminded of is a long time ago, Green Mountain Coffee sold, the stock was on its ass. They sold like a 15 or 20% stake in the company to Coca-Cola at a like 50% premium to their implied valuation. And of course, the stock immediately shot up 50%. And like, I don't think you guys need the capital. I was just wondering if you guys felt like you need some
If my
sort of.
stock if my stock is going to be on its ass, I'm going to take the company private. I'm not going to sell it to a strategic. I'm not going to give him the
Right.
upside. I'm going to keep it for myself.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So there's nothing that a strategic would offer you. Got it.
No, there's nothing. Listen, I've dealt with a lot. I dealt in the oil industry with strategics in both Russia and Canada. I've dealt with strategics in tobacco. I've dealt with strategics in a lot of different areas, and I have found that it is much better to sell to them than to partner with them.
Got it. Makes sense. Got it. Okay. Well, hey, I appreciate you joining. You're happy to kind of give more comments if you want, or hang around, but want to be
No,
respectful
no.
of your
Listen,
time.
I'm going to jump. I was sitting in the evening. I just got out of being sick with COVID for 3 weeks, so I'm slowly getting back into the world. And so I was listening on your call, and I just decided that when you guys said I'll come in, I'll say a couple of things if you want me to. But guys, listen, I'm not going to tell you to buy or sell here. It's a tough market. I fully recognize it. It's been very disappointing for all of us. Don't get me wrong. Would I like my stock back at $23 versus $10? Yes. But it also presents a massive opportunity. And the way I view life always is that in every difficult situation, there's always an opportunity. And as long as you've run your business well, and as long as, I don't believe anyone in the industry is as cashed up as Curaleaf is today. Nobody. And I don't believe anyone has the access to capital that we have today. And I think that that's going to really benefit us. And by the way, I do think the other big guys also have access to capital if they want. Although I think they should have raised it a little bit earlier, because I do think the cost of capital, especially with interest rates going up, I think it's going to rise up potentially a little bit. So I'm very happy that we did the cashing up when we did. That's why I rushed the deal into last year. And now we're in a very strong position to continue to do consolidations. And I think the consolidations are going to get very, very interesting over the next 6 months. So, that's our focus right now. Our focus is continue to build out our core business, and then continue to add tuck-in acquisitions in those areas where we feel that we need a little bit more business, a little bit, more accretion in business, like in Arizona, like in Nevada. I'm not going to say we're looking at some other states right now we think are super interesting, that we think could be very, very strategic for us. And I'm very excited about it, because people are desperate, and that gives better pricing. And me, I always like to buy cheap. I never like to buy at the top of the market.
Got it. Well, great. Thanks for joining us,
Thanks,
Boris.
guys.
And oh, by the way, love the click. I finally got around to trying it over the holidays. So
I'm
great
glad
product.
finally you got it. Finally glad you got it. Okay,
Yeah.
guys.
All right.
All
Talk to you
right.
later.
Bye
Bye.
bye.